Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Right, so here we are on another beautiful Sunday morning in early August 2018 in the West Yorkshire market town of Otley, sort of near the eastern border or the eastern side of North Yorkshire, and we're just gonna take a ride from here, would you believe, Sainsbury's car park, and we're going to go over the river in Otley, the River Wharf, and we're going to go over the tops towards blubber houses and drop down onto the A59, and then we're going to take the road to Pateley Bridge. It's quite a scenic route through one or two small picturesque villages, and from there, from Pateley Bridge, basically sort of wind our way back through RAF Menwith Hill. For those of you that don't know, Menwith Hill, it's an American Air Force base. Not entirely sure what they do there, but it's rumoured that it's some form of monitoring station, military intelligence gathering, no doubt. I've actually been there once to a social function a few years ago, but never got further than the bar, I think it's fair to say. But it is an American air base with American personnel there. They were very, very hospitable and welcoming, if memory serves. So we're just in the middle of Otley here, at Crossgate. So we're just going to nip round the back to cut out the busy lights in the centre of Otley. Then we'll hang a right over the bridge up past Wharfdale Hospital and over the tops to blubber houses. So lovely little market town, Otley. And back in the day, I'd say sort of back in the 80s, perhaps early 90s as well, when I was a serving police officer before I retired, Otley was one of those exceptional towns that had the pubs open all day, with it being a market town. And I seem to recall it had what was called either a special or a general order of exemption from normal licensing rules, because back then, of course, pubs opened at 11:30, shut at 3 in the afternoon, opened again 5:30 and closed at sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock, depending really on which area you were in. And Otley was one of the few places, particularly on market day, where you could drink beer all day long. And did it cause the police some problems? As you can well imagine. Of course, now we've got pretty much 24/7 licensing regulations, and it's no more extraordinary than anywhere else, other than being a very, very lovely, typical Yorkshire market town. So, fairly new to this, so I'll just start by saying this is one of 3 bikes that I have, but I've only had this. It's a 8-year-old BMW R1200 GS Adventure. Yeah, and I know before you start everybody's got one, I know, but that's for a reason, isn't it? But my other two bikes, I have a Triumph Rocket 3 Touring, black one, 2.3 litre, huge touring cruiser, well, the biggest that you can actually get. Hello. So this should be interesting. Now, is it roads? This could put pay to the plans. Is the road closed or is the road not closed? And there is another way to get where we're going. Or I really don't want to turn around on this camber. No choice, it seems. So, it rather looks like we're going to have to go back down here and hang a left further down, and that will take us up towards Harrogate and Norrid. So, where was I? Ah yeah, so the other bikes I have a Rocket 3 Touring, 2.3 litre, hugely powerful, torquey motorcycle, and I also have that's the reason. I also have a Yamaha XJR 1300 muscle retro bike, but both those bikes, you know, they're in split mint condition, so if there's any precipitation about, particularly through the autumn and winter months, you know, I've got to virtually take a week off work to clean them. So it just occurred to me that I needed an all-round practical, weather competent machine, and much as the adventure bikes in general, but I think particularly the BMW GS adventure machines, much as though they are as stigmatised as they are iconic, are supremely competent. And although this machine is 8 years old, I've found that it's late enough to have a lot of the more relevant and useful electronic assistance, such as the electronic suspension control, and a lot of sort of useful telemetry, I suppose, for example tyre pressures and temperatures and what have you. And this of course is one of the older air-cooled versions, as you can probably hear, but full of character. And I liken this engine to the sound of a World War II aircraft engine, which is probably appropriate because my father was a corporal engineer in the RAF during World War II in the Far East, and I'm always reminded of the sound of aircraft engines from that era, particularly when this machine's at full tilt, as it were. And it's just a hugely practical, competent machine, and I know people such as the Missenden Flyer have commented on upon the fact as he perceives it, but when he's on his GS he doesn't get as many nods and waves as he does on his other motorcycles, and yeah, I think I can, with some degree of confidence, I think I could corroborate that. I've certainly, over the last couple of months, come to hold to that view, so don't know why that is. Maybe it's because there are so many of them, whether it's a sort of kickback against the whole, you know, McGregor-Bowman sketch, who knows. The bottom line is, such a versatile machine. Handling is excellent for a bike this size, plenty of power, very comfortable, great carrying capacity. You know, what's not to like? So, Pateley Bridge via another route. It unfortunately means that because of whatever happens or has happened back there, and you know, I hope it isn't too serious, whatever it is, particularly if it's a motorcyclist, but the most scenic of the routes is still on the plan. It's just the first bit over towards Blubberhouses that I'm having to cut out now because of that. But anyway, everything happens for a reason. And it's interesting this year. I mean, last summer, very frustrating for most motorcyclists. Wasn't a particularly good summer, and neither was the one before, for that matter. But of course, this year, 2018, we've had a long run of exceptionally warm, dry weather, and comparisons have been drawn with the long hot summer of 1976. Now, at the beginning of that, I was just 13 years of age, but I do have vivid memories of it. And I'm not entirely sure those comparisons are valid insofar as I recall it, back then we had months of back-to-back soaring temperatures, even in this part of the country, you know, even in Yorkshire, in the north of England. And there was no occasional punctuation by showers or half a day of rain, anything of that nature, and we have had that 2 or 3 times over the last few months, which has helped enormously. But it's still been good. Sort of reminds me of 1995, which was exceptionally good. 2006 for a time was exceptionally warm. So probably on a par with that, but nonetheless very, very welcome indeed. And it does have its downsides, because on a Sunday, on an open road like this, we've got somebody in front doing 25 miles an hour. So, you know, what's that all about, really? It's a 60 mile an hour road here. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, you could remotely do 60 miles an hour around this bend that's approaching, but this sort of timid, risk-averse, nervous driving frustrates other motorists to the point where, you know, people start taking risks. And I'm afraid, in my view, people who drive like that are as much a risk on the roads as people that are perhaps doing 10 or 15 miles an hour above the speed limit. The caveat to that, of course, I suppose, is that it all depends on the circumstances. And as I say, I was a police officer for 30 years, and a good part of that time was spent as a traffic officer, and I've certainly seen the consequences of bad driving, reckless driving, inconsiderate driving over the years. But in that time I've sort of come to the conclusion it's a far more complex issue than outright singular factors around speed and other variables such as road surface and weather conditions and the rest of it. And I think for the most part it really is an attitudinal issue, and to a certain extent a competence issue on the part of a lot of drivers, and I suppose riders for that matter. But anyway, let's hope hope this vehicle peels off at some point, otherwise this is going to get very, very frustrating. Okay. Let's have a look. Very odd. Hello, sir. There's cars all over the road. I wonder if the GoPro's spooking him. I'm retired, mate. Don't worry. You know, I do think, because there's a stack of cars behind me, I do think, you know, I mean, not everybody can drive with the same levels of confidence. And it's not a binary thing, you know, you're not either an exceptionally good driver or a very poor one. There's a whole spectrum of competence. But I think if you're quite a nervous driver like this, it's probably a good idea just occasionally to pull in, just as some slow moving tractors do occasionally, and other slow moving vehicles. So in the distance there you should be able to see Menwith Hill Air Base, or the golf balls as it's been known locally and colloquially for some time. Okay, here we are. Dear oh Lord. This particular area here is called Norrod. It's spelled Norwood, it's pronounced Norrod. There seems to be a peculiarity of many places in Yorkshire that the received pronunciation bears no resemblance to the spelling. I mentioned that we'll be cutting across past Menwith Hill up there onto the A59 shortly to take the Pateley Bridge Road, and a few weeks ago, and for the second time in as many years, the A59 was closed, actually at Blubberhouses. It's an interesting road. It's the primary route between Skipton and Harrogate, really. A59, single carriageway, spectacular ride over the tops. But it is sort of carved into the hillside, and I think that sort of caused one or two underpinning issues, you know, with the structural integrity of the foundations, or whatever they're called in the road building industry. And it's back open now, albeit with temporary traffic light control. That's the Sun Pub, biker friendly, dog friendly, walker friendly. But whilst it was closed, because it is the sort of primary connecting route between Skipton and Harrogate and all points in between, it displaced a large amount of large commercial traffic onto the switchbacks, basically, some of which had to be closed, just because large vehicles were being diverted down there by sat-nav or personal intuition or speculation, or, you know, finger in the wind or whatever, and it caused a lot of local problems. And I know HGV drivers come in for a lot of bad press, particularly, you know, like the large Tilcon and Hymus type construction commercial vehicles that you see. And I do find some of them, and they're quite intimidating when they're coming towards you at speed and look for all the world like they've no intention of giving way to you, even if you have been seen on a motorcycle. and I have sort of mixed feelings about that. I mean, I know some people complain endlessly about large commercial vehicles and the fact that often they're to be seen negotiating small roads in built-up areas and picturesque rural areas. That tend to find those same people that complain still expect things to be on the shelves in the supermarket when they go, still expect to be able to place an order online and to have it delivered. And you know, hey folks, you can't have, as they used to say in Yorkshire, the spice and the halfpenny. You can't have your cake and eat it. So we're just going to have a hang a left here. We'll be coming back out there. It's just a circuit really, but I found, you know, for a sort of 40-minute ride, it's a great circuit. In fact, I might even nominate it for you know, for MCNs. You know, that article they run where they look at what the best riding route that you can complete on a gallon of fuel is. I think you could probably just about do this. This is. So this is my first time out with the GoPro and helmet mic. So tested it at home, seemed to be fine, but the relationship between me and technology is we've been uneasy bedfellows over the years, let's put it that way. But we'll see. I mean, if it didn't work, you'll never get to see this, so maybe I should just start cursing and swearing like I normally do. Now, I think I should be somewhere near before long. It's probably worth reflecting at this point actually that the whole YouTube thing has just completely changed the way that people get their on-screen entertainment. And I mean, certainly a couple of my favourites, the Missenden Flyer, Del Boy's Garage, and Richie Vida. I mean, Richie Vida's great. I mean, those guys, obviously they have a whale of a time when they're out riding together. Great camaraderie. I did try to get on the Wildbad Weekender for 2018, but it was long sold out by the time that I sort of dropped on Richie's channel. But I'll definitely be up for the 2019 Weekender. I believe he's promising something different and special this year, so I'll look forward to seeing what that is. But the American tour, I mean, that was compelling viewing. I think, was it 22 episodes? And I suspect that I'm about to find out just how much hard work is required in terms of the sort of post-capture phase, the editing phase and uploading phase. I'm guessing that's where the hard work is, and that's the part that you don't get to see when you're sat down enjoying the onboard motorcycle footage and the banter and the scenery and all the rest of it. And you know, on any given day to be able to do that, it's probably a lot of work. To be able to do that whilst on tour abroad is quite something. And you know, all credit to people like Richie and the Missenden Flyer. What's his name then, the Missenden Flyer? You know, you can't just call him Missenden or Mr. Flyer. So in the unlikely event that you're watching this, it's only fair that you do, because I watch yours. What's your name, pal? I mean, I'm Dave, aka the Bingley Wheeler. Maybe it's a marketing ploy, you know, to maintain some air of mystique. Okay, so this is the start of the run from where we turn right there. That was Blubber Houses, and this run here will take us all the way through a little village called Greenhow, down a steep embankment called Greenhow Hill, which they cycled up on the Tour de France and the Tour de Yorkshire, which is quite something, as you'll see. It goes on forever, and it really is steep in parts. Nice looking pub there, Stonehouse Inn. And an old water tower, presumably. So even for the old air-cooled engine, this 1200cc air-cooled boxer has still got more than enough get up and go. Gets down the road really well, and it's not. It doesn't have the torque of the Triumph Rocket or the Yamaha XJR 1300 for that matter. But it is it's a smaller engine even than the Yamaha, but it's a much smaller engine than the Triumph. The thing with the Triumph Rocket is you can be sat here in fifth gear and just wind the throttle back and you're away. The touring version of the Triumph Rocket 3 is actually detuned. So I think it's, you know, the Roadster and the Classic are about 145 brake horsepower. But Triumph, in creating the Rocket 3 Touring, although they use the same engine, I think they're obviously after creating a different creature altogether, something more relaxed for touring and cruising. So it's detuned to something like 108 brake horsepower, but of course the quid pro quo of that is a payoff in torque, and the amount of torque is incredible. I mean, you know, it's a big heavy bike, albeit that the centre of gravity is carried quite low, so it's certainly more manageable than, for example, the large K-series BMWs, which always feel very top heavy to me. But it's the torque is phenomenal. I mean, just wind back the throttle in fifth gear and your Wellington naughty speeds before too long. This is much more sedate, but entirely capable of eating up miles and putting a smile on your face. But like I said, a lot of people seem to not only dislike them, which is fine. I mean, taste in motorcycles is an entirely subjective thing, but a lot of people tend to actually seem to harbour a degree of hostility towards these machines. And, I do wonder why, because they're really good. Maybe the majority of that group actually haven't ever ridden one. they're going to keep to the near side lane or the near side line sufficiently to be able to allow a motorcycle to get past. And to be fair, I mean, I've got the luggage on this bike. It's not the narrowest of bikes, and you have to be conscious of the width at the back. I mean, at the front it's fairly obvious, clearly defined by the width of the handlebars, but sometimes you can get caught out and catch a pannier. So I'll just shut up for a bit now because this scenery gets quite spectacular around here. Boys and their toys, said he. 3 bikes in the garage. I actually have 3 bikes because I had one from new, BMW K1600 GTLE, top of the range. Cutting edge technology all the way, everything that you can think of. And 2 issues with it. I mean, I had 3 good years with the bike from brand new. The first issue was it was top heavy. And the first time I dropped it, I hadn't fitted crash bars, and that cost me £2,500, £2,500 for a new silencer and the plastic bits. So that was an expensive lesson, and then I fitted the Wunderlich crash bars front and rear. I think they were about £275. And the second time I dropped it, again at 0 miles an hour, low speed manoeuvring. I find them very top heavy. The crash bars were brilliant. There wasn't a mark on the bike, and I mean not a mark. But not a bike to inspire confidence at low speed for me. And also soulless, no character. I mean, a brilliant engine, that 6-cylinder 1600cc, transverse mounted, 3 throttle modes on the fly-by-wire. But I found the throttle an absolute pain in the backside. I don't know if the new fly-by-wire throttles are any better, but that was a 2013 when I bought that bike. But soulless, lacking character. I mean, not everybody wants character out of a motorcycle. A lot of people just want functionality. And some people want visual style. But for me, it's about overall competence for the role. And character, which is a bit of a quirky thing. I mean, it's very, very idiosyncratic, isn't it, as a notion, character. And I suspect that no 2 people would define character in the same way, particularly in relation to motorcycles. But for example, this engine, this air-cooled twin, I mean, it's great. I mean, on deceleration, occasionally you get the odd pop and rumble, and I think that's great. I mean, it sort of harks back to the heydays of British motorcycling, you know, the 50s and 60s, and till the 70s when the sort of the Japanese machines came to dominate the market for so many years, until people like Triumph and now Norton came back onto the scene, and very good it is to see them as well. And in fact, the Triumph Trophy SE is a very tempting proposition for me if I were ever to part company with the utterly outrageous Rocky 3 Touring, but we'll see about that. Well, sir, Mr. GS. You'll tell the newer GS's with the LED headlights, but this, when I got it, had the yellow halogen bulbs in, and you can get an LED conversion, but that struck me as far too much work, and from what I'd read, not a great deal of reliability. So I've just opted with this for blue HID effect bulbs in the headlight, side light, main beam, and the two driving lights at the front. And it gives a much whiter, almost pure brilliant white light. And I also have two auxiliary, as Mr. Flyer refers to them, and they are the ones that he recommended as well, I hasten to add. I have those fitted as well, but I've yet to wire them in. But I've decided I'm not going down the Hex Easy Cam route. You can buy that CAN bus accessory that allows you to run a number of auxiliaries off the main wiring loom. It's only available in the States, and by the time you've paid taxes and import duty and handling charges and the rest of it, $175 piece of kit's coming in at 300 quid. And I don't particularly need a lot of the functionality around that particular piece of equipment, so I've just spent £30 on eBay on a wiring kit, so we'll get round to that at some point. So this is Pateley Bridge, another nice little market town. Okay. And over the River Nid, I believe. Love these places. I mean, if you took the cars away, this could be, well, if you took the clothing, the fashion away, not in the literal sense, of course, you could be in any earlier decade, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Beautiful, timeless places, these. And I'll just show you as we get back towards Menwith Hill here. What we are now, actually, is you could probably see with the other side of that valley. Hello, sir. And as we track along here, we'll go through a little village called Summerbridge, and that's got a real oldie worldy type hardware store, come local garage, come utility, come whatever, and it's really good to see places like that still exist. I suspect there's nothing that you can't buy in that hardware shop. 4 candles please, or probably memory card for a camera, and I bet he's got everything. just watching last night on YouTube, and again it was the Missenden Flyers channel. Because he does some really good reviews, and because he's got a super channel with, I don't know what it is, 80-90,000 plus subscribers, of course, and entirely understandably, dealerships are happy to loan him the new models as they come along, you know. And he's had the new BMW Adventures, he's had Yamahas, he's Kawasaki's, I mean, you name it, basically. He's just every major brand that you could name, except I believe Aprilia, but it's certainly Ducatis, and I don't think I've seen him do Motor Guzzi's, but I'm suspecting you know, there aren't any dealerships local to him that have those machines, but the other main dealerships are obviously happy to loan him bikes, sometimes on a long-term basis, you know. And last night I was watching his review and his comparison review of the KTM 1290 Adventure, head to head with the GS Adventure with the BMW, and they both sort of came out on an even par, but you know, considering they're both adventure bikes, they're a bit sort of chalk and cheese, really. I didn't think the KTM was anything that I'd ever want anything to do with, and initially I thought that those waspish insect-like front end, that styling was not for me at all, but it's a sort of styling that grows on you. And having watched that last night now, it looks a cracking bike, and that V-twin engine is obviously streets ahead in terms of power and character and what have you than the BMW water-cooled boxer engine. And I think the only thing that would sort of, and this is something that he touched upon in the review, that sort of slightly put me off, would be the fact that it's a chain-driven bike on the KTM, which is quite unusual in this day and age. Not only unusual for an adventure bike, but quite unusual for any bike with that size of engine. I would suggest. Well, another GS. Afternoon. And yeah, spectacular looking, that lovely orange and white colour. And I think there were issues over the luggage not quite having the carrying capacity or the convenience of the BMW GS, but you know, you can't have the spice and the halfpenny. Cracking looking thing, and I think it was 14 grand for the KTM 1290 Adventure S, which is a slightly sporty one. There's the R, which is the more off-roady one, and the T, which is the touring one, but apparently the touring one doesn't have the TFT instrument display, and it doesn't have the redesigned front end yet. I'm sure it will in due course. But it sort of comes in at 14 grand. Now I know a new GS Adventure fully loaded with all the bells and whistles is certainly going to be 18 grand, so I don't know if there's a sort of quid pro quo markup on the KTM, you know, to the same extent. But certainly the machine he was reviewing seemed to be very, very well specced up indeed. They're the quaint, these villages, the ones that are essentially defined just by the parameters of the road. You know, it's just like this is one road on one side of a valley, and the community is built up either side of the road. And this is the hardware shop I was telling you about, so if you look there you'll see JT Todd and Son Engineering. Look at that. I mean, there's everything there, isn't there? Guttering, sewage pipes, you can get petrol, agriculture and plumbers, merchants, hardware, tools, DIY, you know, what's not to like? Fantastic. We need more of those, and less B&Qs and home bases and Wicks. across there now, and that's where we've been, you know, so essentially we're heading in the opposite direction on the other side of the valley. The other great thing about these adventure bikes is the capacity of the fuel tank. I mean, on the Triumph and Yamaha, you know, 150 miles. If you're going to enjoy your riding, that would be, you know, a realistic maximum on one tank of fuel. On this, well, the indicative range, once filled up, is, you know, it can be 400 plus on here. It's a 30 litre tank. But by crikey, you know, because fuel prices have increased, haven't they, fairly substantially over the last few months. It feels like you've filled your car up when it comes to paying, because fuel's gone up. And apparently fuel's gone up for two main reasons. One is oil is bought in US dollars, and the pound has depreciated on the back of Brexit, and therefore, consequently, it's not rocket science, the cost of the refined product at the end of the day at the pumps has increased. And I think if it weren't for the supermarkets heavily discounting fuel, you know, we might be routinely paying well over £1.30 a litre. And sorry, and there was a second reason, and the second reason apparently is that the global production of oil is not what it was. As during the fracking revolution in the States, when it was at its absolute peak, you know, production, there was so much production, there was a surplus around the world of oil, and that brought the price right down. And apparently brought it down so far that a lot of the oil fracking endeavours that had cropped up across the States just couldn't make enough money to keep going. So, I mean, those are market forces, I suppose. At the end of the day, that's capitalism in action, isn't it? And yeah, you can make what you will of that. I just tend to think the world's a very unequal place, and as time evolves and the human race evolves, we should be becoming less unequal, and it looks like we're becoming more unequal, particularly in this country. And it seems that if you have amassed wealth by whatever means, you have none of the day-to-day anxieties and concerns, frustrations of most working people. And yet it's those very working people that are allowing the affluent in society to become richer and richer. And without getting too much on a soapbox, of course, that's what Marx said. At the end of the day, that capitalism only works is because workers are not actually paid in real terms what they are actually worth. And while ever the world operates under that system, that's what we're going to have. And it's sad. I just love it when you know, come out of the hot sun into these cool, leafy, tree-lined stretches of road. Fantastic. You know, and it's just occurred to me, I've been gobbing on so much, I've missed the right turn back to Menwith Hill. So, whatever. Don't even know where this goes, and I can't be bothered plugging the sat nav in.